The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So, nice to see everybody. Good to see you all. Many familiar faces, if not all familiar faces. I think I pretty much know everybody here, so nice. So I'm gonna talk about probably my favorite movie, The Iron Giant, which is an excellent movie for, or analogy for training with and converting karma. And so I'm gonna try and use that as a kind of a framework to talk about some of the themes which I think the movie does a beautiful job expressing. I was doing some last-minute research this morning, and I came across an interesting article that was saying that most people thought that when this movie came out, which was in 1999, that it was an anti-gun movie. But the author of the article was saying, actually, it's a movie about sin, or as Buddhists would say, about karma, right? Which was interesting to just read that, because that was how I had always seen it, the story, and what it had always. I find this story very inspiring, and yeah, it's just one of these stories that I often will think about, and has been a large part of my life and my own journey in practice, because I think of how good of a job it does portraying the idea that we have karma, and we have to sit still with that, and we are not bound by it. It's not fate. We're not doomed. We can change. And I will just say, I had a lot of points that I felt like I wanted to make sure and make. So I'm going to read, I think, more than I would usually like to, but I got to make sure I don't wander off and I stay on task. So, so with apologies, I'll be reading a bit, and then hopefully we can just chat. So the first thing I want us to consider is the past, present, and future. So the present moment is a result of and has been shaped by the past. Okay, the past has shaped this present moment. And this present moment shapes the future. This would seem fatalistic if it were not for our free will, the freedom to choose how we interact with the present. And I don't know that this statement is true, but I think that this is probably the only thing we have any control over. But I'm still sitting with that and chewing on that. But we cannot control external conditions in all the myriad forms that they come up. And we cannot control conditions that will arise in the future. But we do have a bit of control or influence over one condition that will arise in the future, which is our attitude of mind. And our attitude of mind does have an effect on the external conditions that will arise in our lives, okay? External conditions are influenced by our attitude of mind. We can't control those external conditions, but I think we can influence them. So, a quick definition of karma, which I'm not really going to try and go into karma as a technical thing, but that karma is past actions and choices, okay? Our past actions or choices are planting seeds. Reverend Master Jisho always used to say that karma was habit energy, which I really liked that that analogy or that synonym, habit energy, because we know what habits are. We are reinforcing particular attitudes of mind which produce speech and actions which become habit. So the Buddha said that things start with the mind, and then they become speech, and then they become action. But everything, the mind is the forerunner of all things. So what's going on in our mind is eventually going to manifest as speech and as action, okay? It's like it gets coarser and coarser until it starts affecting everything around us, right, as action. Habit is something that becomes easier and easier over time. We don't have to think about it, right? That's what habit is. So when Reverend Master Oswin and I were in Eugene, a very early lesson that he taught, which I found really helpful, and it was interesting to me at the time because it kind of changed how, and made me think about reality and our perception of time, that the present moment is the intersection of the arising of karma and our own free will, okay? And the future is the sum of the present arising karma and our present free will to make choices, okay? We're making choices on how to interact with that karma if we understand the teaching of karma. And as Buddhists, I think, we do in whatever way that we are familiar with that teaching. If there was no free will, if it was just karma, then it would be fatalistic. We would have no control. Your karma would arise, and that would be it. And then it would just kind of keep seeding the future. But we have free will, and we have the ability to choose how we interact with our karma, okay? It is not fatalistic. And we'll talk a bit more about that, and that's what, the Iron Giant is going to be an analogy for. How we have karma, how we sit still with our karma, and how we make choices with interacting with it, and how that shapes our future. And I'm not sure that this is a true statement either, but when I was reflecting on this, it seemed to me that the freedom of the Buddhas resides within this understanding. You are who you choose to be. Nothing can stop your training. Nothing can stop you from making a choice, okay? You can sit still with anything. That's very difficult to do. And you should hold that sentence without expectations, unrealistic expectations placed upon yourself. But I think maybe part of faith in Buddhism is having the faith in yourself that you can actually sit still with whatever comes up. And when it's negative things that are coming up, you can sit still and not perpetuate that negativity or that suffering. You don't have to do harm. Do we have a choice? Okay, is there really free will? We're just going to peek in that door for just a second, and we're not going to go very far. But sometimes we make choices from incomplete data, okay? It is the case that we make choices and we may not have the whole picture, we may not see things very clearly, but I think sometimes one could ask, are we really making, what choices can we really make? But the Buddha was very specific to say that our intention matters, Okay, there's an old story about a monk who was blind, who was doing walking meditation, and he was stepping on bugs while he was doing his walking meditation, and the monks got really upset about this. He's killing creatures, right? Well, the Buddha said, no, he's not intending to kill them. He doesn't see them. So that's kind of how I tend to think about, when I chew on that idea of choice, is that the intention is very important. Okay, we're doing the best that we can, and when we see that we can do better, we do. Okay, it's a fluid thing. So, converting karma, when I was trying to think about how to put that into words, is the act of sitting still with unwholesome mental attitudes and feelings and not acting upon or becoming those unwholesome attitudes and feelings, and instead cultivating, choosing, acting upon wholesome attitudes and feelings. Okay, we can't control what comes up for us in our minds. We can't control the feelings that come up. But we do not have to believe in them. We don't have to give them life. We don't have to perpetuate them. We can sit still with them and do our best to, if we're feeling grouchy, just do your best to be kind. Don't act on the grouchiness. You don't deny that that you feel grouchy, but you just do your best to perpetuate kindness, okay? So just a quick homage to the Iron Giant. It was directed by Brad Bird and was written by Tim McCanlys from a story treatment by Bird, which is based on the 1968 novel The Iron Man by Ted Hughes, which was published in the United States as The Iron Giant. So the story begins that in October of 1957, during the Cold War, an object from space crashes in the ocean just off of the coast of Rockwell, Maine. Reports of a giant metal man begin to be heard in the town, and a young boy named Hogarth is eager to investigate. Hogarth indeed finds the rumored thing and discovers it is a 100-foot-tall metal robot. The Iron Giant befriends Hogarth after the boy saves him from being electrocuted by power lines. The giant, Hogarth realizes, is like a lost puppy. He lost his memory when he crashed to Earth and is like an innocent child knowing nothing of the world or his place in it. So both being essentially children, Hogarth begins to teach him how to talk and play. Okay, so this is like a wonderful analogy for us. We come into this world and we don't know anything about the world. And, the secular world might say that we come in as blank slates, but actually we come with a whole lot of baggage. We, the audience, when we're watching the story, begin to get some hints throughout the story that there is more going on with the giant than might be readily seen, as Hogarth introduces the giant at first to comics, and the giant becomes interested in a villain comic titled Atomo, the Metal Menace. So the giant gets kind of excited, like, oh, that's a nice comic. And Hogarth says, Hogarth notices the giant's fascination, and he encourages him. He says, no, you're not a bad guy like Atomo. You're a good guy like Superman. And he hides the Atomo comic underneath a Superman comic because he sees the giant kind of getting interested in the Atomo comic. So Hogarth kind of, right from the beginning, has this kind of kind innocence, and he sees for a second this curiosity with the villain. But he says, no, you don't have to be the villain. You're the good guy, like Superman. Later, while they're playing in the woods, the two encounter some hunters, And the giant learns about death by finding a deer that the hunters killed. The giant then becomes strangely fixated on the gun the hunters dropped as they fled, which is a really wonderful visual moment. The giant's eyes go kind of red, and it's like his programming takes over as he registers the gun, and like a shadow falling across the face, and you see him become this kind of other thing as he gets fixated on the gun. And Hogarth recognizes this and kind of shakes him out of it, and he says, "Hey, are you okay?" and has to explain to the giant what death is, that the deer is dead. They shot him with the gun. And the giant has feelings. He has an emotional reaction to this. And Hogarth says, well, it wasn't your fault. Everything dies. It's bad to kill, but it's not bad to die. And the story begins to take on this wonderful ethical tone, this kind of this morality that Hogarth is beginning to realize he has to teach the giant. So in the movie, this triggers a dream. Now, I haven't read the book, but there is a deleted scene from the original movie that if you ever watch this and you watch the director's cut, it'll be in that version, where that night the giant has a dream where he is with all these other robots like him, and they're attacking some foreign alien planet, right? So it's kind of building this idea that the giant is programmed to destroy, and the giant is beginning to become aware of this idea that there's something inside of him that he doesn't know about, and that maybe he doesn't recognize or feel that he can control. And so this is the seeds of karma, and the seeds of karma can be known. With practice, we notice our own personal patterns and inclinations, our triggers, our greed, hatred, and delusion. And like the giant, we get hints of what habits we have cultivated and are programmed with. And we must recognize and convert the negative habits and cultivate and support the good habits. So that could be things in our own life, in this life, that could be things from a previous life. But when we practice, sometimes it's as fantastic as a dream or a vision, and you get a very real sense of something that happened before this life. Or more often, it's little hints, because if you meditate and you watch your mind, if you watch what your mind is doing right now, that is all you really need to do. You have everything you need right now, right? If you watch your mind right now, okay, well, maybe the mind's not getting up to anything. Great. Well, keep watching. It'll get up to something, right? And when it starts to get up to something, have a look. What's happening, okay? Those are clues. Those are the programming, and we are programming ourselves. Okay, the giant was programmed, and it's a story, right? So, but the giant was programmed by some alien race, and he's beginning to realize, wow, I'm a destroyer, like I was programmed to destroy. We program ourselves. It is our choices and our actions of body, speech, and mind which is programming our future attitude of mind. What is going to come up in the future? Okay, if you cultivate anger, if you cultivate greed, if you cultivate delusion, that is where the mind will go. Okay? We talk about the ruts in training. Okay? The wheel wants to fall into the rut because it's easy. It's become a habit. And we make mistakes. Okay, karma is very strong. Feelings are very difficult to sit still with. And often our ability to choose is clouded by karma or habit, this habit energy. We habitually choose. But we always have the freedom to make a different choice. We do have the freedom to make a different choice. That doesn't go away. It's that our ability to see that we have a different choice, that is clouded. That can be sometimes very difficult to see, or we react so fast. There's not enough space, that there's not time to make a different choice, okay? In our story, this is represented by a scene where Hogarth and the giant are playing, and Hogarth innocently aims a toy gun at the giant. The giant reacts like he did when he saw the gun in the forest. It's like his programming takes over, and his programming zones in on the gun, and he recognizes it as a threat. And some unknown internal system kicks in and reacts, and the result is that the giant shoots laser beams from his eyes at Hogarth. But the giant is confused, as if it was automatic. He didn't mean to. He doesn't understand what he's doing. Luckily, Hogarth escapes harm, but as a result of this action, the adult on the scene yells at the giant to get away. He accuses the giant of being a big gun that walks. And again, there's this association with the gun that they found in the forest. So the giant is beginning to understand, what does that mean, that he's calling me a big gun that walks? Guns kill, right? And the giant is beginning to understand that. So the giant runs away. And Hogarth goes after him because Hogarth knows it was an accident. The giant is his friend. So this would be an example of daily life where our habit to react in a certain way happens so fast that it's just there, it's done, okay? We make the mistake, okay? And that's not always anger, okay? That can be greed. I've been in the kitchen before, and you snap up a cookie or a piece of chocolate so fast and put it in your mouth, it's halfway down the throat before you realize, like, I didn't even think about doing that. But again, if we're meditating, if we're paying attention, we see the result of those actions, whether it is anger or it is greed. Delusion is very difficult to see, but delusion is like seeing a shadow. You can't see delusion directly, but you can always see its shadow. But you have to look very hard. So mistakes are our great teachers, and we're going to make them. And when you make a mistake, you just make whatever amends you can. Don't lose the lesson. Let it teach you, and see, what do I need to look out for in the future? What do I need to change about myself? Okay? So Hogarth catches up with the giant, and they work out their misunderstanding. The giant declares to Hogarth, I am not a gun. Okay? And it's curious how, as we begin to recognize and get a handle on our koan, which is, koan is like our spiritual question. It's the way in which our karma tends to manifest for ourselves. When we start to see our koan, or we start to recognize our karma, or this habit energy, these patterns, it's like, and especially when we start to train with it, when we actively are willing to train with it, that the universe ups the ante. It says, great, Allard recognizes this about himself. Good, that's a good start. Let's turn the heat up. And we're often challenged further as we go deeper in our practice to sit still within difficult conditions. Okay? It's like the conditions get more difficult. But we can sit still with them. In relation to our story, the Iron Giant, at this point in the movie, the army is now involved and is actively hunting down and shooting at the giant. So the giant and Hogarth run away and try to hide. And the giant is now learning how to sit still with his karma and not perpetuate it. This is depicted by seeing the giant's defense response get activated as the army is shooting at him, but he is beginning to realize that he can control his defenses and doesn't attack back. Okay, the army's just, they're firing tanks at this guy, they're throwing jets at this guy, and it's triggering his defenses, and he's like shielding his eyes. He's saying, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not a gun. Okay, it's a really sweet story. So, however, the army's attack escalates, and the giant and Hogarth are finally knocked unconscious by an explosion. The giant comes to and finds Hogarth and thinks that he is dead, when in fact Hogarth is just unconscious. But when they found the deer, the giant tries to pick up the deer, and Hogarth says, no, don't do that, the deer's dead. We can't do anything for it. So the giant finds Hogarth, not understanding that he's unconscious, and he tries to pick him up, and Hogarth doesn't respond. So he associates that with the deer and thinks that Hogarth is dead. So this is one of, not to nerd out about movies, but this is one of my visually favorite scenes in probably top 5 in any movie. It's just this beautiful scene where the giant is completely overwhelmed with grief. And the army just keeps shooting at him. They're afraid, and they see that the giant is still alive, and so they say, well, shoot at him. So now the giant consciously breaks the precepts. Now the giant indulges in his anger, and because his grief over thinking that Hogarth is dead, his anger, he always has a choice, but his anger is too much for him not to want to fight back. And because of this choice to indulge the anger, he gets all of his memories back. And in getting all of his memories back, he realizes all the weapons that he has, all the defenses that he has within. And he turns into this giant sci-fi doomsday robot and begins shooting back, begins hunting down the army and shooting back. So Hogarth, well, first let me say, so habits are hard to change. Karma continuously manifests as difficult feelings that are hard to sit still with. It is said that feeling is the reaper of karma. So the karma that arises, as I understand it, it can be a bit of a misunderstanding to say, like if you got in a car crash, well, it was my karma to get in the car crash. My understanding is that karma is not creating the physical car crash. It's our feelings. It manifests as our feelings within that situation, whatever the situations are that we're involved with. And it's easy to go with the habit. And it is tempting to give into the delusion that I can't change. This is just the way I am, okay? But the truth is that we can change. And Reverend Master Mayon says at morning service, may all beings realize the truth. And I think one expression of that truth is that we can change. It takes hard work and patience and willingness to choose a different path. But the truth is, we do have a choice. We can change. So Hogarth regains consciousness and becomes aware of the battle between the giant and the army, and he runs off to try and help his friend. Approaching the giant, who now really seems like the foreign alien menace everyone was afraid he was, Hogarth yells at him to stop. And the giant turns his weapon on Hogarth, not recognizing even his own friend, and prepares to fire at him. Hogarth bravely stands his ground and tells the giant that it's bad to kill. Guns kill. And you don't have to be a gun. You are what you choose to be. We are the giant. That's us. And we are all walking guns, right? When we act selfishly and do harm to get what we want, we leave a wake of suffering behind us. It can be anger, it can be sharp and painful, it can be greed, it can be soft and pleasant, or it can be ignorance, which is hidden and I think self-fulfilling. Ignorance is, again, it's interesting. It's almost like you can't see it, but you can see its shadow, and it often has a kind of self-fulfilling aspect to it. Something that reinforces, I'm right, and they're wrong. Today we had our Great Compassion Vigil, and we took the time to put up all of these pictures and all of these statues on the altar, because each one of them is reminding us, you have a choice. Look at what you can choose to do. This is not separate from us, okay? This is us. This is our choice, or the choice that is available to us. You can be this, okay? The Buddha, all the Buddhas around the temple that we're constantly bowing to this Buddha, now you can't get around the monastery without having probably about 10 Buddhas. They are making us stop. Stop and remember, you have a choice. This is you. This is a choice that is available to you, okay? The Buddha is not something separate from us. This is not us worshiping something on an altar, something separate. This is a choice that we can make in every moment to choose Buddha. Going on, always becoming Buddha, always choosing Buddha, okay? In every moment, reality is fluxing, it's always changing, and every moment is different. And yet there is, in a weird paradoxical way, only one moment. But we have to keep reaffirming the choice to turn towards Buddha, to turn towards the good, to do our best to do no harm. And it's not easy, but that's the work we got. That's our work. So keep making the good choice, and when you make the mistake, which we do, there's always the next choice. There's always the next moment. Sit still with the consequences of the mistakes that we have made and make the right choice now. And as we continue to choose Buddha, what kind of habit energy does that create? If we keep choosing Buddha, you'll see so many Buddhas around you, everything will become a Buddha. So, thank you.